Hey everybody, it's Sean back again, and today we're going to be discussing game journalism, which has been a hot topic for a good couple of years because a lot of people in the public don't trust them anymore. Vara Dark wrote this tweet, as you can see on September 28th. She says here, gaming journals should be required to live stream, upload a complete unedited playthrough of a game on their socials in order to continue receiving review codes from publishers. This allows the audience to see their authentic reactions and ensures transparency. It also holds journalists accountable, ensuring they actually play the entire game before writing and releasing a review. Now, needless to say, some of the internet didn't take kindly to this tweet while some agreed. But just on this point here, it reminds me of two instances of this year that I called into question whether said game journals even played the games that they were talking about. You may remember this Screenrant review of Black Myth Wukong. They had some legitimate concerns about the game, stuff they liked and stuff they didn't like. However, there was a strange part at the end of the review that made me question if they even played the game in its entirety. It should be noted that the person who originally wrote this review had their name scrubbed from the actual review due to harassment, which isn't cool. Nobody should be harassed for their opinions. However, they were called into criticism for this. While my analysis and review of Black Myth Wukong remains focused on gameplay, it is important to mention the controversy surrounding the game studio and reports of misogyny and sexism from developers. Playing as a female gamer allowed me to notice the issues surrounding inclusion and representation. As far as chapters 1 and 2, while characters are clearly fictitious and fantastical creatures, there were no female or feminine NPCs, enemies, or bosses present. The only exception, if you can call it female, was a boss named Mother of Stones in chapter 2, which is nothing more than a still glowing rock with no abilities, being guarded by other enemies. The reviewer goes on to say, the lack of diversity and inclusivity resonates with the misogynistic comments reported to have been made by developers, which express disdain for women playing their games. Although Black Myth Wukong truly does have enjoyable moments, the underlying feeling that women aren't welcome in this world felt present throughout my gameplay experience. It's worth noting that the game is based on the novel Journey to the West, which does consist of a few important female characters. To not include any women or only include a few in an adaptation meant for modern audiences is quite disconcerting. While this doesn't take away from the exhilaration and fun of boss fights themselves, women fans of Souls-like games may have a different perspective, especially given that, according to reports, the developer also suggested that women aren't capable of enjoying or being skilled at these type of games. Now, it's important to remember here, there was controversy with Black Myth Wukong. Apparently, somebody translated some quotes from them, calling them rather sexist and misogynist. However, it did come out after that the translation might be incorrect.
And the creator Feng Jie posted the famous Weibo that IGN criticized as sexist, particularly the first sentence. 想扩圈多招几个被舔到勃起不能 was translated by IGN as I wanted to expand my circle and hire more people. Get leaked until I can't get an erection. My English isn't very good, so I don't know how native English speakers perceive this. But in Chinese, what he actually meant was, I just wanted to recruit a few people, but received more price than expected, which made me feel uneasy. However, I wanted to clarify that just because I understand what he was trying to say doesn't mean I approve of his way of saying it. Again, you can call him rude and crude, but there's no need to label him as sexist.
While most reviewers seemed like they thought it was necessary to put this controversy in the reviews, was the translation even correct in the first place? Nevertheless, I do remember reading this and did not have the game at the time. I knew that I saw pictures going around of female characters in the game. Now that I have the game and I'm up to chapter 5, right about to be vaulted right into Chapter 6. And I can safely say, beyond Chapter 2, you definitely see female characters. Did this reviewer finish the game? Because, yeah, there are female characters. They literally exist. And you stopped short of talking about the other chapters. You talked about Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Yes, I do remember this boss, the Mother of Stones. It's just a stone. In fact, most of the enemies that you fight, as they clearly state here, fantastical creatures, are just that, fantastical creatures. There are hardly men in this game up until that point. Like, I'm not understanding, but I guess they mean the animals were male-coded. But to say that there were no or little to no female characters means that either you didn't play the game or you just wanted to spread an agenda, and that's why you purposely talked about Chapter 1 and 2. And this game is huge, folks. Huge. I thought it was going to be about, like, you know, DMC length. It's not. It's open world-ish, but I'm sure many of you have the game because the game sold crazy, right? So in light of Vara Dark's tweet, I want to know from Screenrant if the Screenrant reviewer played this game, because it seems like they didn't. And if they did, they definitely wrote this with a purposeful bias against the game. Because it's not making any sense. These characters exist. You can't pretend that the female characters didn't exist when they do. Moving along, y'all might remember the IGN article about the Resident Evil game that cannot be remade. And in the article, they list something, or rather miss something very important about the game that calls into question, at least for me, did they play the game? Or at least did this particular game journalist play the game? We're gonna look at the video version of it just for brevity.
With Resident Evil 4's release last year, Capcom's project to remake the glory years of its survival horror series is complete. But as the game's post-credit scene suggests, the remakes aren't over. And so the big question is, where next? The obvious answer is a remake of Resident Evil 5. But on the game's 15th anniversary, it's clear that moving forward chronologically will take Capcom's remakes into the series' weakest era. And so the answer is not to remake, but to rewrite.
I think the game structure can be messed with a little bit, but rewrite, I mean, I don't really think it really needs to be, in my honest opinion.
Resident Evil 4 may have replaced the series' traditional continuous structure with discrete levels in an attempt to move away from the backtracking-heavy design of previous games, but it preserved the spirit of locations like the Raccoon City police station. The village, Salazar's castle, and the island feature interlocking, explorable pathways that solidify these locations as authentic spaces rather than obstacle courses.
That is true. That's what made Resident Evil one of my favorite games. The environment and architecture was very interlocking.
Resident Evil 5 has no interest in this, with the majority of its stages being little more than corridors peppered with dead ends to hide treasures in. Their lack of authenticity means no one will ever mention the Kajuju Autonomous Zone in the same breath as the Spencer Mansion. I'm
gonna wholeheartedly agree with them. It's kind of hard to go to a chapter stage structure for a remake. It was disjointed. I'm not gonna lie about that. That I agree with 100%.
All of this doesn't account for Resident Evil 5's most notorious problem: racism.
This is what I'm talking about, y'all. I'm not sure what they were on, or what this person was on, when they made this article that obviously got narrated for this video. But they're going to soon explain to you why this game is racist, okay?
Set in a fictional West African country, Resident Evil 5's primary antagonists are black people. Yes, it's technically the Ouroboros virus that protagonist Chris Redfield is fighting, but the parasite's host is depicted as a nation of mobs and primitives who are violent even before their infection.
Okay, this is one instance where I want to pause for two things. One, yes, the primary zombies that you fight are black, because I mean you're in Africa, but if you look back in the screen that just passed, there were other zombies that were not black, because not everybody that lives in Africa is black. Granted, he did say primary, okay. And also, he said that they were violent before being infected. I don't know if it's just me, y'all. To anybody who played Resident Evil 5, the moment that you get into that village, it was clear to me that something was off. Those people were infected as soon as you got there. That's the reason that they looked off. Anybody who did not look off was either a victim or one of the protagonists, like Josh and another character that we will name soon.
Intentionally or not, Resident Evil 5 positions Africa as the Dark Continent, an uncivilized world harboring a diseased population that needs gunning down via Western intervention in the name of global security. This insensitive treatment of people of color was hotly debated even as early as Resident Evil 5's debut trailer.
I just have to ask people a question, right? Is this supposed to be a moment where I'm supposed to be fragile about my skin color? If Leon in Resident Evil 4 visits a land mostly inhabited by Spanish speakers, and in Resident Evil 6 you actually go to a location where there are Asian zombies, nobody complained about that. Somehow this is an issue. It takes place in Africa. I don't know what else you're expecting to see.
Remakes may be able to redefine their source material, but there's only so many changes you can make until it's not a remake at all, but an entirely new game. And if you take Africa out of Resident Evil 5, is it Resident Evil 5 anymore? Even with a vastly improved, more sensitive take on the continent, perhaps one with a black protagonist and a more empathetic look at the outbreak, the experience would simply be too divorced from the original to hold the name Resident Evil 5.
I don't know what form of gaslighting that IGN did here. This was better when it was only an article, because I think they made a video of this after they wrote the article. By the way, for the person that wrote the article, don't go harass them. This is old, this is probably like 6 months ago, right? The video makes it even worse. Okay, riddle me this, Batman. There are 2 playable characters in Resident Evil 5. 2. 1, 2, uno, dos, right? Okay. One is Chris. He got beefed up for the role, right? And the other one is Sheva Alomar, whose art you see me doing here. She was a playable character. She's on the adventure with Chris. She's not even partially on the adventure. She is through the whole adventure. Now, granted, if you're playing by yourself for the first time, you have to play through as Chris. However, this was the first Resident Evil, correct me if I'm wrong, to do 2-player co-op online. So, if your buddy also bought Resident Evil 5 back in the day and wanted to join in on your adventure, he or she would have to pick Sheva. Therefore, technically, doing your first playthrough as Sheva, if you are player 2. Of course, if you as player 1 beat the game with Chris, you can use Sheva or Chris, it doesn't matter. Long story short, there is literally a black African protagonist in the game, added on with Josh, who is another African hero of the story. So what IGN is trying to tell me is that this game cannot be remade because Chris is single-handedly mowing down zombies as a Caucasian man versus black zombies. So we're just going to ignore that Sheva ever existed, correct? Like, she doesn't exist because he literally says, what if we had an African protagonist? But we did. And I'm like, hey, buddy, did you play the game? And what makes the video even worse, compared to the article, is that as he says it on screen, they flash Sheva on the screen.
Perhaps one with a black protagonist, perhaps one with a black protagonist, perhaps one with a black protagonist.
I can't. I don't even know. I'm like, were you trolling? IGN, were you trolling? I'm not understanding. Like I said, I was with the valid criticisms of this remake. I agree, they do have to insert a little more horror into it. Even though I enjoyed the heck out of Resident Evil 5 originally, I did love the remake of 4. Well, 4 never forgot its horror roots, and it seemed like it was kind of ramped up in the remake. They might have to do that, or they should do that for Resident Evil 5 if they're going to remake this at all. I just don't understand where we're trying to pretend that a black protagonist didn't exist. Is this black erasure? Uh-oh. IGN, I thought you were an ally. Well, I guess they never claimed to be, right? But I'm sure they want to think of themselves as an ally. In any case, what is funny to note here is that, yeah, back in the day, this problematic game, IGN gave a 9. If I'm not mistaken, a 9.3. So yeah, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about that. Needless to say, every race, every creed of people got on IGN's case for article / video. It was glorious. And all they really did was turn off the comments on Twitter. I see they still left the comments up on the YouTube version. I have no idea why. Now, going back to Vara Dark's tweet, should people live stream their gameplay? Hey, I don't know. It is a funny idea. I would love to see it try to implement it, but realistically, they're not going to do that. So, what I will say is these game journalists need some kind of credibility now, because between, you know, strange things like we're going to talk about a possible mistranslation and misquotes, to slander a game, to stating that characters didn't exist, and a whole host of other things that game journalists have been involved with where the past a good number of years, yeah, they're losing credibility day by day. Listen, so yeah, game journalists, get your you know, your equipment ready. Live stream that game so I can see that you play it. Go play Black Myth Wukong, the whole thing, all 6 chapters, and don't skip the cutscenes. I don't even think you can skip cutscenes. Well, I wouldn't know because I didn't skip them because I wanted to see the story. Maybe Screenrant would have skipped it because they didn't see the female characters that were on screen. Yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I really don't know what the solution is. I realistically don't think they're going to implement anything like live streaming, but it does call into question the credibility of game journalists. So all I gotta say is, can y'all do better? Just a little bit. Play the game. Stop telling on yourselves, and stop saying that characters don't exist while you show them on the screen. That's weird. And we not gonna erase my homegirl Sheva. Okay, like, I actually liked her. To be honest, I wish she would return. Anyway, y'all, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I will see you in the next video or live stream that I do. Until then, everyone stay safe. And if you like the content on this channel, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Until the next time, peace out.